This one is called Dad. D-A-D, Dad. You know, to be honest, I don't have a lot of childhood memories of my dad. There isn't a lot to remember because he worked a lot. He wasn't really around that much growing up. It wasn't like we go fishing together, or we had our weekly hunting sessions, or we'd go for a drive on the car. There wasn't a lot of things. I remember bits and pieces, you know. And I remember on the weekends he'd work in the garage on his cars. I remember he used to drink Ham's beer. He used to smoke cigarettes in the garage. Sometimes when we were in the car, we'd go somewhere, he'd be smoking in the car. I remember sometimes he took us to the movie, and he would always be late because he'd get lost. And then we'd get there, and the movie trailers that were already beginning. And I remember that. I don't really have a lot of memories per se that were like, you know, bonding moments, unfortunately. You know, and for the longest time, I would be angry about that. I would be resentful. You know, other kids would have memories of their dads and going on fishing trips or going bowling or going golfing together or something. And I don't really recall any of those kind of bonding moments. But as I've gotten older, you know, I realize how hard it is to be a father. And especially if you didn't have a father to show you what it was like to be a father. And his father didn't spend any time with him. There was no bonding between his father. His father was abusive, drank a lot. So I don't blame him for not knowing how to be a father. And just like myself, you know, I try to be the father that I didn't have. But there are times when it's hard for me. You know, I don't find myself sitting down with my son saying, I love you. It feels weird to me. And I hate to say that. It's messed up. But it does. It feels weird to me to say, I love you to my son. I can say it to Grace all day long. And I think, you know, my sons don't really say that to me either because maybe it feels weird to them. You know, and I noticed, you know, Sean would say, I love you when he goes to school to Grace and Phoenix, but he wouldn't say, I love you, Dad. And I realized this is something that I created. I created this because it doesn't feel normal to him to say that to me. Nor do I say that to them. And it's something I'm working on, something I'm trying to get past because that's not good. You know, your kids should know that you love them. And your kids should know that, you know, they matter to you. You know, some of my memories, and there isn't a lot of fond memories, but there's a few, and there's a few not so fond memories, you know. And as a kid, I remember one time my dad was working in the garage. And I know I've said this story before to him personally, but unfortunately it's a story that I remember, and it's never left my memory, unfortunately. He was working on the car, and I'm sure he had been drinking some beers, and I'm not saying it had anything to do with that, but I went out there and I was trying to start a conversation with him. And I remember I said something to the effect of, "What's up, bro?" You know, like, "What's up, bro?" Like, you know, I don't know, trying to sound cool, but at the same time being like, you know, what are you doing? And I remember he snapped at me and he said, "I'm not your bro." And obviously it had an effect on me because even to this day, I still remember that feeling of being rejected, of that feeling of being like, oh, okay. You know, I was just a scared little kid trying to get to know my dad, and he shot me down, like. And I said, okay, and I just went back inside. You know, as an adult, one time Sean had said that to me. He goes, "What's up, bro?" And that instantly triggered that memory for me. And I said, I'm not your bro. You know, and Sean is a little more persistent than I am, perhaps. You know, he didn't cower away or, you know, but he's very sensitive too. And there's a lot of me in him, and I see that. Maybe that's some of the things that annoy me about him, is because he's a lot like me, you know, and I see that. And we become a lot like our fathers, even if we don't want to admit it, or a part of our parents, you know. You know, that saying, you become your parents, you know. I find myself saying things like, well, if that was me, I would have given him a kick in the butt, or, you know, something like that. And I could see my dad saying something like that, my mom rolling her eyes and being like, oh God, you know, I would have given him what for? And I can see my grandfather saying that to my dad, and I can picture that cycle of how he ended up being like that. And sometimes I say that, and I go, oh my God, I've become my dad in some ways. One of the fondest memories I have of my father, though, and to be fair, you know, they weren't all bad or anything. There just wasn't a lot of memories of him. But this was more as an adult, and we had gone to the Round Table Pizza together, just me and him. And we were talking about, you know, the idea of being a father and what it was like growing up, and he teared up and he said, you know, that he was sorry. And he was sorry that he wasn't a very good father growing up to me and my sister, and that I was a much better father than he ever was. And I remember tearing up in that moment. And I remember his face, and he was tearing up. And I remember thinking, that's the only thing he's ever said to me in my whole life that meant something to me. It didn't make up for all the years growing up. It didn't take back all the things that happened, but it meant a lot. And even to this day, thinking of that, as you can see, it was very emotional for me. And it still is. You know, after my mom passed away, we made an effort to be closer. And I definitely feel like, you know, I appreciate the fact that he's made a very big effort to, you know, it's not too late to apologize, you know. I remember saying that to somebody one time, and they were like, no, you can't apologize after a long time. It doesn't really matter. But that's not true. That's a lie. It doesn't heal anything. It doesn't take anything back. But at least there's closure. There's resolution. There's some sense of, you know what? It's okay. I matter, it matters. It doesn't fix anything, but it definitely helps to heal. And in that moment, I could see that in my eye, and to see him. And I knew that things were different at that moment. From that moment on, things were okay. You know, being a single dad and trying to do the best I can with my kids. And there's moments of frustration, and there's moments where I'm like, how can I do this? Or they like their mom better, or their mom does this, or their mom does that. And I'm just trying to keep it together. Trying to do the best I can. Trying to be the dad that I didn't have. And it's hard sometimes. We're all just trying to do the best we can. And, as an adult, I've come to appreciate that, how hard that is. Putting food on the table, paying rent, so we have a place to live. But at the same time, trying to be in the moment, trying to be present. Sometimes it's hard, you're going through things, or you're stressed out, and your kid's getting on your last nerve, and you want to be like, shut the hell up, and it's hard. And I can understand that as an adult. As a child, I didn't understand that. I couldn't understand that at all. And what it's like to be in a relationship, and what it's like to have a stressful job, and then have the expectation of, hey, you're supposed to be a parent, you're supposed to be a father, you're supposed to be, part of this bigger picture. And when you don't have the tools, you need to know what to do in those situations. It's hard. And I try to do the best I can. I try to appreciate the things that I have and be thankful for the life that I have. It could be a lot worse. I have a good job. For the most part, my health is good. We have a roof over our head and food on the table. You have to try to learn to appreciate the things you have, or else you're always going to be, the glass is half empty, So I want to say, it's not that I don't appreciate how hard you tried, and I don't appreciate, all that you did for us growing up. Certainly we could all be a little better or do a little better. But, I think in the whole scheme of things, you did the best you could with what you had, and I appreciate that. I truly do. And it's hard for me to sit down and say things like, I love you, Dad. And it's hard for me to say, I love you, Sean, or I love you, Phoenix. But I hope, and, they feel that, and they know that I would do anything for them. And I'm working on the rest of that, trying to vocalize that more. And I don't blame anybody. I don't blame my dad for, not being more loving or being more vocal about how he feels about things. I didn't learn those kind of things from my dad, unfortunately. Those are things I learned from my mom. We're all just trying to do the best we can and taking things one day at a time. But the thing that I appreciate the most is, that he's, and these, a lot of times, and especially, in my relationships and my work and things going on, that he's been there for me now. And I guess the saying is true to some extent. It's better late than never. I wish he had been there when I was a kid, though. I could have talked about, guy things, or, took me out and, had more time to bond and be like, you know what, I don't say it enough, but I love you. Sometimes you can't take time back. Most of the time you can't take things back, for sure. My kids are getting older, they're growing up. Sean's already 11, in 7 years, he'll be an adult. 11 years have gone like that, and you look back and you'd be like, where did all that time go? It's not too late. It's never too late to make memories. It's never too late. He always gives me a hard time because, I spend too much money. But you know, my kids are going to be young only one time, and in the blink of an eye, they're going to be adults. They're going to have busy lives. They're not going to be able to come hang out with me. They're not going to sit at the table with me every night and eat dinner and talk about their day. They're going to have their own lives. You can make money. You can always make money. There'll be plenty of time for that. But you can never take back memories, and you can never take back your children's being young and being in your house and spending time with them and laughing and joking and watching movies and going to the beach. Those are things you can't get back. You know, and I realize that as an adult, and I'm trying to desperately form those memories because I know that time is slipping away. You know, yes, I'm getting older and my children are getting older, and we're all getting older too. Anyway, I just want to say, you know what, I do appreciate everything you did for me and our family, and I appreciate you now. And I'm sorry that we didn't have a closer relationship growing up. But I appreciate that you are making the effort now, and it's not too late, you know. Maybe one of these days we'll go fishing. Yeah. Maybe we'll go bowling or something, or golfing, or we'll do one of those things, you know, sons and fathers do, you know. Anyway, I just want to say I appreciate you. And, you know, and maybe I don't say it enough, but I do love you. All right.